Hey everybody, this is Jason here with Levelhead Trading. Going to go over the overall markets and we'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin and say Nvidia, Tesla, gold, and some of the commodities that I'm interested in, natural gas, and then the energy sector XLE. So let's just start off with the S&P 500. So basically S&P 500 is at all-time highs. But looking at the weekly chart, this is how last week played out. So we have a very small range in the last week of price action. So still continuing to make all-time highs. But if we break the low of this candle, which is 567.60, then we will set a weekly, no, we will go into weekly consolidation. And then the question will be, what will be the size of the pullback? Will it be healthy, or will it maybe mark the top, the long-term top for now? So on the weekly chart, that's how it looks. On the daily, which is making me think that we will start consolidation this week and maybe starting as early as this Monday. This was the top, this was the highest candle, which was on Thursday of last week. So now we have an inside bar, which is Friday's action. So if we are to continue in that direction, then that will be the top for now. On the daily, we're not really that overextended, but if you go into the bigger time frames as far as RSI levels, on the weekly, right now, currently it's at 65. But what makes me more convinced that we are near the top or, going to have a significant pullback is when you go to the bigger time frames, like a 2 week time frame. You see here, all the way back in March of 24, we got up to 74 on the RSI. And then here we got up to 76. So on the average, which I like looking at that, we're pulling back. It's on a downward slope. And in the most recent upside, we're just coming and touching that average. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. Going into another bigger time frame, the monthly, that's where you start to see it really being extended. On the RSI, on the monthly, it's at 72. And then if you go to the 3 month chart, it's really high. And that is at 74 on a 3 month chart. So you haven't made a 3 month high or low in a very, very long time. So that's pretty intense, but this is blue sky breakout, so you can often go much higher than expected. But now, if we go into QQQ technology, it looks quite different. We're not at all time highs, and looking at the weekly chart, just go into that right now. There's the all time high, which is all the way back in July. So we have an upper wick on this most recent week's action. Again, it's a small body candle on the weekly. So if we break below the low of the week of last week, which was 480.25, then that will be potentially weekly consolidation shaping up. And then it would be a tight range. So you have the high, the low, and then you have a higher low, but you don't have a higher high. So that's the difference. So you have your all-time high, your low, you set your higher low there, and then you set another weekly higher low there, but you do not confirm a weekly higher high. So we are not at all-time highs on QQQ. And again, something I like to look at is the average RSI, and where you have a pullback where you get pretty big divergence from the average, and then you come back up and you touch it. Often, not every time, but often when you have that much of a drop, you will come up and touch it, and then you will have further downside. So if QQQ starts pulling back, that will be much harder for SPY to continue making all-time highs. So looking at that very carefully. So next thing, going into the semiconductor space, let me go to NVIDIA first off. And again, we are now on this is the daily chart. So let me first go to the weekly chart on NVIDIA and show you a similarity. See, it's basically a tightening range. So you have the all-time high all the way back in June. Then you have a higher low relative to this low here, but you don't make a higher high. You make a lower high and a higher low, and then you have this upper wick here of last week's action, which potentially is a lower high to this high. So we're getting into a tightened range, a constricting range. So potentially, right, this is a squeeze, and obviously the direction that this goes will have very big implications on price range. So the upper end, the lower end, and now we're just tightening into this coming week. So if we do not go over the high of last week, then potentially if we break the low of this, that'll be further weekly consolidation. But the most important level would be to hold this $100.95 price right here on NVIDIA. And then ultimately the low back here of $90.69. So as you can see, we're not making higher highs, but we haven't made lower lows either. So it's a tug of war, it's a battle between those twos. And if I switch this over to SMH, which is the entire index of the semiconductors, it should look very similar. So again, here's the weekly chart on SMH. So there's the all-time high. You have basically a double bottom right here, right? This was 198.44, and right here you got to $200.49. So a slightly higher low to that low. But look at the difference here. So you have a high here of 253.32, and we did get to 255.99 right here. So we did make a higher high relative to that week, but then we have a fairly big upper wick here. So again, if you break the low of last week, which was 237, then we will be having weekly consolidation a little bit more on SMH. So relatively similar to how NVIDIA looks. So that's wrapping up the semiconductor area. So let's go to Tesla. Tesla is looking very strong. And again, this is now, I'm back on the daily chart with Tesla. There's that last level right there at 271. So we're getting very close to that. At the moment, it's a bull flag on the daily chart. But as far as RSI level, we are at 67 on the daily chart. So we haven't had much consolidation since this higher low back here at 210.51. And also notice this is, I like using this. This is the 200-day moving average. And I like to use this on multiple time frames. I'll use it on a 5-minute, 15-minute, hourly, you name it. I like looking at the 200 period moving average to see how much of a divergence there is either to the upside relative to where it currently stands or to the downside. When I find it pretty extended to the upside or the downside, then I'm anticipating that it'll draw back down or draw back up, getting closer to that 200-day moving average. So that is the most recent level that Tesla would need to overcome, which is 271. But again, RSI level is getting pretty extended. It's not extreme, but it's at 67.67. And if I go to the weekly chart, this is how it's going to look. Again, that's that range right there. That's that 271 weekly candle on that. And really, we've just pretty much gone straight up. So here's the weekly higher low. And from this higher low all the way back here at 202, we've pretty much gone straight up. There was consolidation right here. I guess you could call that the next weekly higher low at 209.64. So I would anticipate that we're going to be topping out because you have multiple levels up here. This is 265. Well, this one's more. It's at 271. This level here is at 268.94. and then here's at 278.98. So getting up there, but again, now here's the 200-week moving average, and we now are above that. So that will be an important level to hold, right? You'd want to be above the 200-week moving average, and then going back to the 200-day moving average, you definitely want to stay above that. So Tesla looking really good overall, but I'm expecting that if the overall market starts to pull back, that it'll be very hard for Tesla to continue moving upward. Now I'm going to go, let's just go into Bitcoin briefly. So Bitcoin, this is Sunday night. It's already starting to have a daily pullback. So the daily high has already been set there. So we had two inside bars going back to Friday, right? So over the weekend, we have Saturday, Sunday, and now technically this is Monday's candle. But I'm on Pacific Coast time, so for me it's still Sunday, but I know at 5 p.m., I believe it is, that's when the candle rolls over to the next day, which in this case would represent Monday's candle. So we already have a pretty substantial pullback. So there marked the high, which was 66,550, and now we're starting daily consolidation on Bitcoin. The other thing, again, we didn't get really overextended, but we got up to 66.60. And note, when I was talking about Tesla, Tesla right now is at 67 on the daily. So they are very similar as far as RSIs. And now as you see Bitcoin pulling back, Tesla isn't, we're not available to trade Tesla yet. So maybe Tesla is going to be pulling back tomorrow, with Bitcoin, in a sense, giving you a little clue as to what potentially might start happening tomorrow with Tesla. So again, we are now in some daily consolidation. As far as weekly consolidation, what we would need to break to say that we are now in weekly consolidation would be the low of last week, which was 62,566, which would be right at the low of that candle. So this is the start of the week, and we'll see what happens there. The other thing I'd like to mention about Bitcoin on the daily is, again, like I said, I like to use the 200 period moving average. So on the daily chart, this is the 200-day moving average. So notice it was sloping upward, right? But as you got here, you rejected and you couldn't hold above the 200-day moving average. So then the divergence, like I said, you got so far below the 200-day. In my opinion, you're usually going to come up and get close to it. We got right up to it, and then we had basically a bull flag on the daily chart, and then we got over the 200-day moving average. But if you look carefully, it's sloping downward. The 200-day moving average has a slight curve to the downside, and we're already approaching it right now. So we might be rejecting from holding the 200-day moving average and then get back underneath it. And then the question will be, do we have weekly consolidation that I was talking about, which would be probably the lows of these candles right there. So we're starting to have, pretty big move on the downside on Bitcoin to start off the week. Now I'm going to go into gold. So gold, again, here's something at all-time highs. And this right now is on a weekly chart, very extended, but we're in blue sky breakouts. So RSI levels don't have as much meaning because we're in new territory. And but anyway, on the weekly chart, gold is at 77.95. So if you're going to have weekly consolidation on gold, you're going to need to break the low of last week, which is 242.59. So we'll see what happens with that. This was the daily cup and handle on gold. You see you had healthy consolidation. I haven't talked about these indicators that I use. This is the 12 period exponential moving average. And up to this point, it's been holding that 12 for a very long time on the daily chart. So you had a cup and handle right here. Here's the cup and here's the handle, which is a bull flag. And then you have your extended move. Generally, I measure from the top of the cup to the bottom. If it plays out, you draw a line from the top to the bottom, and then you extend it that same distance to the upside, and that will give you approximately where the next target to expect it to go to. So it exceeded that based on my vision here. It went above that move, but again, pretty extended on the weekly RSI. And if you look at the monthly, there's been no consolidation for a very long time, all the way back to here. And then you could say this was a weekly bull flag. So, and then here you had pullback right there. So really, if you hold above 220, then it's still going to be healthy. And that would line up with the 12 period EMA. So that's how gold is. Gold is all-time highs. And so far, no indication of anything that it's going to be giving back. Next thing I'm going to go into, which I'm very interested in, is natural gas. So here on natural gas, this is a weekly chart. So natural gas, as most people know, has been just in a free fall to the downside, just lower lows and lower lows and lower lows. But what I like here on natural gas basically is this double bottom right down here. So my symbol here is UNG, but there are other truer symbols to natural gas. But on UNG, you have a low of 1258 here and a low of 1271. So you held that low and then you broke bull. You have an engulfing candle, making that the higher weekly low. And now we're just stair-stepping up on the weekly chart. And you have quite a bit of volume. And you don't have very much resistance. You have no consolidation on the way down. It was just down, 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 down. So now we have a weekly higher low. Biggest thing on natural gas is at some point you top out. And if you continue the trend, then you need to eventually consolidate, make a weekly higher low, and then a weekly higher high. Then that will be really, really positive. But if you break it down under the smaller time frame, you can follow it on the daily chart as far as making daily higher highs and higher lows. Once the daily higher highs and higher lows stop, and potentially we go into a daily downtrend, then that'll mean we set the weekly lower high. But then, like I said, then we can just hope and expect that at some point we will make a weekly higher low. So as the daily trend continues, as the high, higher low, higher high, nice consolidation here. You didn't break any lower, and then you made a higher high. And then just recently, to me, this is the new, well, it's not is, it definitely is. This is the new daily higher low, which is at 1535. So we are now approaching the 200-day moving average. But the thing I like is we're not overextended. We've been in a downtrend forever and ever. And so I'm expecting this RSI to get up at least to 70 or so. And there's very little resistance. The next resistance right here is at about 1658. So that's only about 1.5% away. That'll line up with the 200-day moving average. So potentially what we do is we get up, we form a high at some point, top out, and then we have daily consolidation. And then wherever that bottoms out at, and then if we continue back upward, that will eventually set the weekly higher low. So I have a position in natural gas, and I'm just going to be holding on to it based on the daily chart, moving my stops up to the next daily higher low, which for me is at $15.35. Going into other energy, I also have a position in Utilities, which has also been on a tear. This is the weekly chart, very overextended, similar to gold. It's at 75.98. Notice the 200 week moving average is all the way down here. So it's just, again, it's on all-time highs, breakout. So RSI levels, the normal numbers of 30 as being oversold and 70 as being overbought, those usually go out the window when you break to either all-time lows or all-time highs. So just following it on the daily time frame, really. And again, looking at the 12 period EMA line, it's just been holding it every single time, making daily higher highs, daily higher lows, daily higher low, daily higher high, and potentially another consolidation period here where we've just gone sideways. But notice this candle, which was Friday, pretty good sign that there's going to be more continuation. And because of this consolidation, we cooled off the RSI, because over here, the daily RSI was up at 78. So because we've now had sideways action, the daily RSI is back down to 69.28. So it's not extremely overextended. Yes, on the weekly it is. So this is my guideline, and this is my stop on utilities is $79.41. And again, it'll be the same thing that I was talking about with gold. At some point, we'll top out, and then we'll have weekly consolidation, and then all we will look for is a weekly higher low. So that's how utilities looks. That's the symbol XLU. And the next one that I'm really excited about, because it has not performed very well lately, is XLE Energy. So went from utilities, now I'm on energy. So on this one, I have it right now on the monthly chart. What I want to talk about on the monthly chart is we are not at all-time highs. All-time highs goes all the way back to 2014, believe it or not. So if you notice that we got right there back in April, the high in April, we got up to $98.97. And the high back in 2014 was 101.52. So that's the last level that you need to break over. So again, I'm on the monthly chart, but what I've noticed on the monthly chart right here is we have the monthly higher low, a monthly higher low, a monthly higher low, a monthly higher high. And if this plays out the way that I am anticipating, this could be the next monthly higher low, because that will just consistently bring it up to higher low, higher low. Basically, these are double bottoms right here, down here at 75.36 and 75.33. But then right here, 78.98. And the low of this one was $83.02. So I kind of like this setup. The risk and the reward is $4 right now. That would be my stop. My stop would be the low of this 83.02. And so we're talking about maybe 4.3%. I think that's what it is on the downside. So that would be your risk. But if this is going to be something that holds and we then go to all-time highs, the reward would be over $100, which would be $13, which would be well over, double your risk as far as your reward. That would be, if it got to $100, 13 would be, I don't know, approximately 870 would be 870 to the upside would be 10%. So $13 would be, it'd be, I don't know, 15, 16, 17% upside. So I like the higher lows. That's what I'm looking at, is the higher monthly lows, and that this has been building up for a long time. This goes all the way back to 2022. And most recently, we got to that high of 98. So, and the other thing I wanted to point out was on the weekly chart, I wanted to show you this channel which to me, it's just doing the same thing that it did prior. So you see this channel? This is back here where you set the weekly high or low, or you could say the monthly high or low, to this level right here. You see this grinding down. So this is a descending wedge, right? So you finally bottom out, and then you set the monthly high or low. And then you go all the way up to here. So what are we doing now? To me, it looks the same as this channel. We are grinding our way down, but I also like the look of this particular candle, which goes back to September of 2024, September 9th. That candle, to me, marks the bottom. I can be wrong, but that is that $83.02 price level that I'm going to use as my stop. Then you have a weekly candle that sets that weekly high or low. This candle, because you overtook the high of that week, which was 87.43, that sets the high or low. So now this week that has just passed is a weekly inside bar. Not really, no, it's not a weekly inside bar because it did go below that one, but it's an inside bar relative to the last 2 weeks. So if I put this on a 2-week chart, I'm spending too much time on this. I'll get off of this really quick. But there's your 2-week candle, and then this is 1 week into this 2-week candle. So to me, if you look at the prior 2 weeks, you see this upside candle here marking the low, the higher low relative to this. It's a very similar candle. See, this is a 2-week candle, and then you have some consolidation there. 2-week candle. You have some consolidation. This is not a complete 2-week candle. This is only 1 week into this candle. And then same thing like here. You have that 2-week candle. You have that 2-week candle, which is very similar to how these look. And then that marked the higher low. And then you had really good follow through. So that is what I'm seeing there. I think that's going to be it. That's what I wanted to talk about today is the broader market, SPY. That includes many different sectors, and then breaking it down into QQQ, and then going into the semiconductors and Bitcoin. So if you like what you see, subscribe. I have had videos I made in the past, but I stopped doing it for quite a while, just focused on my trading, and now I'm going to try to dedicate some time back into doing this. So again, if you like what you see, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.